Everyone, everyone, gather round! Derek's voice boomed across the ballroom, champagne glass raised high like a golden scepter. The wedding reception buzzed with the energy of 200 guests, all dressed in their finest, all smiling those practiced smiles that come with open bars and expensive venues. I stood near the back, nursing a club soda, watching my brother-in-law command the room with the ease of a man who'd never doubted his place in the world. The burgundy tie Clara had picked out for me felt too tight, but then again, everything about tonight felt constricting. I want to introduce you all to my new family, Derek continued, his arms sweeping in theatrical gestures. Starting with the most successful divorce attorney in the state, my new father-in-law, William Hartley. Applause rippled through the crowd. William raised his glass with practiced humility. And the brilliant doctor? Patricia Hartley, who saved more hearts than a romance novelist. More applause. Patricia beamed, her surgical precision evident even in her smile. My new brother-in-law, Judge Thomas Hartley, who keeps the scales of justice balanced. Thomas nodded regally from his position near the head table. Derek's eyes found mine across the room, and that familiar glint appeared. The same look a cat gives a mouse before the killing blow. And finally, he paused for dramatic effect, meet the family disgrace. His finger pointed directly at me. Logan Hartley. He stocks shelves at the grocery store. The laughter started like a trickle, then built into a wave. Guests turned to look at me, their expressions a mixture of pity and amusement. Someone near the front actually pointed. I could hear whispers. That one? Really? How unfortunate for Clara. I raised my club soda in acknowledgement, painted that same smile I'd been wearing for 5 years of family gatherings. The smile that said I accepted my role as their punchline, their conversation piece, their reminder that not everyone could rise to their heights. If only they knew. But they didn't want to know. They needed the myth of Logan the grocery clerk, Logan the disappointment, Logan who made them all feel better about their own accomplishments by comparison. It was easier than asking questions, easier than looking beyond the surface they'd constructed for me. So I smiled and played my part, even as my phone buzzed with messages from Geneva, Tokyo, and Sao Paulo. Messages about deals worth more than Derek would see in a lifetime. Patricia's call came at 7 a.m. sharp. Logan, dear, about tonight. Please don't embarrass us. Don't talk about your work situation. Just say you're in retail if anyone asks. I looked out at the city from my downtown apartment, the same city that knew me by a very different name. Of course. Derek has important clients attending, successful people. You might learn something about ambition and drive. If she only knew about the 18-hour days building Anderson Global Logistics into a multi-billion-dollar empire. I'll stay out of the way, I said. After she hung up, I stood in my walk-in closet between two wardrobes. On one side, $1,000 suits, Italian leather shoes. On the other, the costume I wore to family events, off-the-rack clothing that screamed disappointment. I selected the burgundy tie Clara had given me, along with the navy suit that never fit right. In the mirror, I looked exactly like what they expected. Logan, who couldn't get his life together. My phone lit up. 3 missed calls from Kenji in Tokyo about Pacific shipping routes. 2 messages from Dimitri in Moscow about lumber contracts. A text from my head of security. Evening extraction protocols ready. Helicopter on standby. I typed back, may not need it, still deciding. But deep down, I knew tonight would be different. 5 years of being their punchline while my company generated more revenue in a quarter than their combined practices made in a decade. Tonight, they would see who Logan Anderson really was. The country club dining room buzzed with the kind of conversation that only happened when successful people gathered to discuss how successful they were. I sat at the far end of the family table, in what had become my usual spot, close enough to be included, far enough away to be forgotten. So Logan, Derek's college roommate Brett, turned to me with that practiced smile. Remind me what you do again? Something in the service industry? Grocery store, I said simply, cutting into my salmon. Right, that's honest work. Really honest. Brett nodded too enthusiastically. Must be nice not having to worry about quarterly reports and board meetings and all that stressful executive stuff. Across the table, Thomas raised his wine glass. There's dignity in all work, Brett. Some people are meant to lead, others are meant to follow. Both are necessary. Absolutely, agreed Margaret, Derek's sister. Not everyone can be a brain surgeon or run a law firm. The world needs grocery clerks too. I nodded along, even as my phone vibrated with an encrypted message from my acquisitions team. We'd just closed a deal to purchase a mid-sized shipping company in Hamburg. The commission alone would have funded Derek's entire wedding 3 times over. You know what I admire about Logan? Derek chimed in, clearly having had too much wine. He's content, really content. No ambition to speak of, no drive to better himself, but he's happy stocking shelves. There's something pure about that level of acceptance. Clara shot him a warning look, but the damage was done. The table fell into that particular silence that comes when someone says exactly what everyone was thinking. I mean, Derek continued, oblivious, how many people can honestly say they found their calling in life? Logan found his in aisle 7 of the local supermart. The laughter was polite, but pointed. I felt Clara's hand squeeze mine under the table, part apology, part plea to just let it slide like always. But as I looked around the table at these people who thought they knew everything about me, something crystallized. The photographer from earlier had been taking candid shots of the family, carefully cropping me out of frame after frame. The wedding planner had seated me with the miscellaneous family rather than at the main table. Even the parking valet had assumed I was someone's driver rather than a guest. They all needed me to be small so they could feel large. They needed me to be their cautionary tale, their reminder that they'd made something of themselves while poor Logan had never amounted to anything. My phone buzzed again. A message from Miguel, my head of security. Helicopter fueled and ready. Rooftop pad secured for 11 p.m. extraction if needed. I looked up at the table full of faces. Faces that had never bothered to ask what I really did with my time. Faces that preferred the comfort of their assumptions to the complexity of truth. You know what? I said, raising my water glass. You're absolutely right, Derek. I have found my calling. They all turned to me with surprise. Logan rarely spoke at these gatherings, never drew attention to himself. I've found exactly where I belong, I continued, meeting each of their eyes in turn. And tomorrow, everyone will know exactly what that place is. Logan, get in here. Derek's voice carried across the hotel corridor. Through the open door, I could see 5 men in various states of wedding preparation, sharing boisterous camaraderie. I stepped inside, feeling the energy shift immediately. Conversation slowed like a record winding down. Gentlemen, Derek announced, meet our family embarrassment. The room erupted in laughter. Brett nearly choked on his scotch. The grocery clerk, James exclaimed. Derek's told us so much about you. Do you get employee discounts on milk? Asked Preston, the hedge fund manager. Dairy prices are killing my grocery budget. More laughter. Derek was practically doubled over. Can you tell us when the best sales are? Brett jumped in. You must have insider information on cereal clearances. I smiled and played the good sport while calculating that my agricultural investment dividends exceeded Preston's annual salary. The same investments that influenced the grain prices these cereals were based on. There's nothing wrong with honest work, James said, attempting to rein in the mockery. Somebody has to do it. Not everyone can be entrepreneurs. Logan's found his level, Derek agreed. No stress, no real responsibilities, just clock in and clock out. My phone buzzed. A message from my chief financial officer about Monday's board meeting discussing Southeast Asian expansion, a project creating thousands of jobs and generating hundreds of millions. Sometimes I envy that simplicity, Preston mused. No board meetings, no international travel. Logan's probably never even been on a plane, have you, buddy? Derek laughed. I'd been on 3 continents last month. Last week's Dubai trip had secured Suez Canal shipping rights, saving clients tens of millions. Not much call for travel in my line of work, I said. See? Honest. Straightforward. Derek clapped my shoulder. No hidden depths, no secret ambitions. Just Logan, exactly as advertised. Brett raised his scotch. To Logan, the most uncomplicated man we know. They toasted my supposed simplicity while I thought about coordinating supply chains across 12 time zones, managing currency fluctuations in 17 countries. My phone buzzed again. Miguel, security sweep complete. Standing by for your signal. I looked around at these men who thought they understood success. Tomorrow's newspapers would carry stories about deals I'd orchestrated, mergers I'd facilitated. But tonight, I was just Logan the grocery clerk. St. Matthew's Cathedral was everything Patricia had dreamed of. Soaring Gothic arches, stained glass windows that painted rainbows across marble floors, and enough flowers to perfume half the city. 200 of Derek and Clara's closest friends and most important business contacts filled the pews, their whispered conversations creating a low hum of anticipation. I sat in the third row, family section, between Aunt Eleanor and Clara's cousin Janet. Both had been carefully briefed on my situation, I could tell, because they spoke to me in the gentle, encouraging tones usually reserved for children or the mentally impaired. "It's so nice that you could take time off work for this," Eleanor whispered as the organist began the prelude. "I imagine the grocery store keeps you quite busy." "Steady hours," I agreed, watching Clara's maid of honor fuss with flower arrangements. "That's wonderful, dear. Stability is so important. Not everyone needs to be climbing corporate ladders and chasing promotions. Some people are just content with simplicity." Behind us, I could hear Patricia explaining my situation to someone. "He's in retail. Basic retail. But he's such a sweet boy, and Clara loves him dearly. We don't judge anyone for their circumstances." Janet leaned closer. "I think it's admirable, actually. All this pressure to be successful and important, but you found contentment in honest work. There's something really pure about that. Pure, honest, simple. The same words, over and over, like a mantra they all needed to repeat to make sense of my presence in their sophisticated world." "Logan's never been ambitious," I heard Patricia continue behind us. "Just not in his nature. Some people are born leaders, others are followers. He's very much a follower, bless his heart." My phone vibrated against my chest, probably Yuki from the Tokyo office with updates on the shipping schedules we'd been optimizing. Or maybe Francesca from Milan with news about the textile contracts. The notifications had been constant all morning, urgent decisions needed on deals worth hundreds of millions of dollars. But to everyone around me, I was just Logan who stocked shelves, Logan who had never traveled anywhere important, Logan who represented the road not taken by anyone with real drive or intelligence. The organ music swelled as Clara appeared at the back of the cathedral, radiant in white silk and genuine happiness. As she walked down the aisle, I caught her eye and smiled. Whatever else happened tonight, I was genuinely happy for her. She deserved this moment, this joy, this celebration. Derek waited at the altar, beaming with pride and accomplishment. He'd worked hard to build his marketing firm, earned his success through long hours and smart decisions. I respected that. Even if I didn't respect how he treated people, he considered beneath him. During the ceremony, as they exchanged vows about supporting each other through all of life's challenges, I thought about the irony. Here was Clara, promising to stand by Derek no matter what, while her own family had never bothered to ask what challenges I might be facing or what accomplishments I might have achieved. They preferred the myth. The simple grocery clerk was easier to understand, easier to categorize, easier to dismiss. "You may kiss the bride," Father Mackenzie announced, and the cathedral erupted in applause. As Derek and Clara walked back down the aisle together, I caught Derek's eye. He winked at me with that familiar condescending affection, the look you'd give a loyal dog or a harmless, eccentric uncle. My phone buzzed again. This time it was Miguel. "Perimeter secure. Helicopter on standby. Awaiting your confirmation for evening protocol." I typed back quickly. "Confirmed. Tonight, we drop the mask." Eleanor noticed me with my phone. "I hope that's not a work emergency, dear. Surely the grocery store can manage without you for one evening." "Just confirming my ride home," I said, sliding the phone back into my jacket. "Oh, that's nice. Did you call a taxi?" I looked toward the back of the cathedral, where Miguel stood in a perfectly tailored suit that concealed enough firepower to secure a small embassy. He caught my eye and nodded slightly. Everything was in place. "Something like that," I said. The ballroom at the Ritz-Carlton sparkled like something from a fairy tale. Crystal chandeliers cast prismatic light across tables laden with orchids and gold-rimmed china. The wedding cake towered 6 feet high, each layer a masterpiece of architectural sugarwork that had probably cost more than most people's monthly salary. I found my assigned seat at table 12, not quite the children's table, but close enough to send a message. My dinner companions included Clara's elderly great-aunt, Derek's accountant's wife, and 3 people I suspected were included more out of obligation than affection. "So nice to meet Clara's brother," said Martha, the accountant's wife, as we made small talk over the salad course. "She's told us you work in food service?" "Grocery store," I confirmed, spearing a cherry tomato. "Oh, how interesting. Which department? Are you in management?" I could see her trying to find an angle that would make my job sound more impressive than it was. These people had clearly been coached to be kind to the family disappointment. Stocking shelves mostly, making sure everything's where it should be. Which was technically true if you considered that my logistics networks ensured millions of products ended up exactly where they should be across global supply chains. Well, that's essential work, Martha said brightly. Really essential. From the head table, I could see Derek holding court with his groomsmen, probably regaling them with stories about his simple brother-in-law. Every few minutes, one of them would glance over at me and chuckle. During the salad course, I excused myself to take a call, ostensibly from work. In reality, it was Dmitri calling from Moscow about a time-sensitive lumber contract that needed my approval. The Finnish suppliers are demanding a 10% premium, he said in accented English. But I believe we can negotiate them down to 6% if we guarantee the volume through December. Approved, I said, stepping onto the hotel's quiet terrace. And Dmitri? Add a clause about early payment discounts. They need our business more than we need theirs. Understood, sir. Also, the Hong Kong office reports successful completion of the container ship optimization project. We're seeing efficiency gains of 12% across the Pacific routes. Excellent. Send my congratulations to the team. When I returned to the ballroom, the conversations at my table had shifted to the impressive success stories of Derek's social circle. Preston just made partner at his firm, Great Aunt Mildred was saying. Youngest partner in the company's history. And James is launching his third startup, added Martha. Derek says it's already got backing from major investors. They all turned to me with expectant faces, clearly hoping I might have some modest accomplishment to share. Maybe a promotion to assistant manager or recognition for perfect attendance. That's impressive, I said instead. The moment stretched awkwardly until Mildred patted my hand. Not everyone needs to be a high achiever, dear. The world needs all kinds. My phone buzzed. A text from my media relations director. Bloomberg wants comment on the Southeast Asia expansion. Should I schedule the interview? I typed back, not yet. Will advise Monday. Work emergency? Martha asked with concern. Just scheduling, I said, which was technically accurate. The main course arrived, filet mignon that melted like butter, paired with wine that probably cost more per bottle than I was supposed to make in a week. As we ate, the conversation continued to circle around achievement and success, with careful detours around the topic of my own limited horizons. But I noticed something interesting as the evening progressed. These people, for all their accomplishments, talked almost exclusively about money and status. Their conversation was a constant game of subtle one-upmanship, each trying to establish their position in the social hierarchy. None of them mentioned the satisfaction of solving complex problems or the thrill of building something meaningful. None talked about the responsibility of employing thousands of people or the challenge of coordinating operations across multiple continents. They were successful, certainly, but their success felt small somehow. Narrow. Local. My phone lit up again. This time it was Kenji from Tokyo. The Manila Port Authority has approved our expansion proposal. Construction begins next month. I glanced around the table at these people who thought they understood what real success looked like. The port expansion alone would create 15,000 jobs and revolutionize shipping efficiency throughout Southeast Asia. But to them, I was just Logan who stocked shelves, Logan who had never amounted to anything, Logan who served as their daily reminder of how well they'd done with their own lives. Ladies and gentlemen, Derek's voice boomed through the sound system, if I could have your attention, please. The room quieted as Derek stood at the head table, champagne glass in hand, ready to give his toast. Derek commanded the room with the easy confidence of a man who'd never questioned his place at the center of attention. The crystal chandelier caught the light of his perfectly white smile as he raised his champagne flute high. Friends, family, distinguished guests, he began, his voice carrying easily across the silent ballroom. Tonight we celebrate not just the union of two hearts, but the joining of two families. Polite applause rippled through the crowd. I set down my wine glass and prepared for what I knew was coming. I want to take a moment to acknowledge the remarkable people at the head table, Derek continued. Starting with my new father-in-law, William Hartley, whose legal mind has shaped policy at the highest levels of government. William stood slightly and nodded with practiced humility as applause filled the room. Dr. Patricia Hartley, whose surgical innovations have literally rewritten medical textbooks. More applause. Patricia beamed, clearly in her element. Judge Thomas Hartley, whose decisions from the bench have upheld justice and set legal precedents that will endure for generations. Thomas raised his glass with judicial dignity. And of course, my beautiful bride Clara, whose non-profit work has raised millions for children's charities while building one of the most respected foundations in the state. The applause was thunderous. Clara blushed and waved, radiating genuine joy. Derek paused, letting the appreciation settle before his eyes found mine across the room. That familiar glint appeared, the same look he'd worn at every family gathering for 5 years. But tonight, he continued, his smile taking on a sharper edge, I also want to acknowledge someone who represents something equally important, someone who reminds us all that success comes in many forms. My table companions shifted uncomfortably. They sensed what was coming. Ladies and gentlemen, I present Logan Hartley. Derek's arm extended toward me like a game show host revealing a consolation prize. Clara's brother who works in food service. Specifically, he stocks shelves at the local grocery store. The silence stretched for a heartbeat before nervous laughter began to bubble through the crowd. Heads turned toward me like flowers following the sun, expressions ranging from curiosity to pity to barely concealed amusement. Now, I know what you're thinking, Derek continued, clearly enjoying himself. Here we are, surrounded by judges and doctors and business leaders, and we have a grocery clerk. He paused for effect. But that's the beauty of family, isn't it? We don't choose our relatives. The laughter grew more confident now, more cruel. Someone near the front actually snorted. Logan represents the honest working man, Derek pressed on. No grand ambitions, no pretensions to greatness, just simple, honest labor. He stocks shelves with the same dedication that his father practices law, that his mother performs surgery, that his brother sits on the bench. I could feel Clara's mortification from across the room. She was staring down at her plate, her face flushed with embarrassment and anger. There's something pure about that level of contentment, Derek continued. While the rest of us stress about quarterly reports and market fluctuations and international contracts, Logan simply shows up, does his job, and goes home. No complications, no responsibilities beyond making sure the cereal boxes are facing forward. The laughter was open now, unashamed. These people, successful people, accomplished people, were reveling in the chance to feel superior to someone. So let's raise our glasses, Derek said, his champagne catching the light, to Logan Hartley, the family member who reminds us all how far we've come. 200 glasses rose in ironic salute. 200 faces turned toward me with expressions of condescending appreciation. 200 voices murmured agreement with Derek's assessment. I stood slowly, raising my own glass, maintaining that same placid smile I'd worn through 5 years of their condescension. They expected me to duck my head, to play the humble role they'd assigned me, to accept their patronizing applause with grateful silence. Instead, I raised my glass higher and said clearly, "Thank you, Derek. You're absolutely right about one thing." The room quieted, surprised by my response. I do represent something different from everyone else here tonight. I looked around the room, meeting eyes with the judges and doctors and business leaders who thought they knew what success looked like. And you're also right that people will remember this toast for a very long time. Derek's smile faltered slightly. This wasn't the script he'd expected. In fact, I continued, my voice carrying clearly through the silent ballroom, I think everyone here is about to learn something new about family. Before Derek could respond, before anyone could process what I was suggesting, Miguel appeared at the edge of the room. He moved with the purposeful stride of a man accustomed to command, his earpiece barely visible, his suit expertly tailored to conceal the communications equipment and security gear that marked him as serious professional protection. He approached my table directly, ignoring the curious stares of 200 wedding guests. "Excuse me," he said in a clear, authoritative voice that cut through the ballroom chatter. "Mr. Anderson?" Every head in the room turned. The silence was so complete I could hear the ice settling in water glasses. "Your helicopter is ready for departure, sir. The flight plan to Geneva has been filed and approved." The ballroom froze like a photograph. 200 faces locked in expressions of confusion, champagne glasses suspended halfway to lips, conversations interrupted mid-sentence. Even the string quartet in the corner seemed to pause between notes. Derek's champagne flute slipped from his nerveless fingers, shattering against the marble floor with a sound like breaking crystal dreams. "I'm sorry," he stammered, his voice cracking slightly. Did you just say helicopter? Miguel stood at attention beside my chair, every inch the professional security operative. Yes, sir. The aircraft is on the hotel's rooftop helipad. We have clearance for immediate departure whenever you're ready. A woman at table 3 actually dropped her fork. The metallic clang echoed through the silence like a gunshot. Helicopter, Judge Thomas repeated slowly, as if testing the word in a foreign language. Did he say Geneva? Phones began emerging from purses and pockets across the room. The soft glow of screens illuminated faces as guests frantically began typing searches. The whispers started like rustling leaves. Logan Anderson. Anderson Global. Is that the same Anderson who... Oh my God, look at this. Patricia's surgical precision deserted her entirely. She fumbled with her phone, her hands shaking as she tried to focus on the screen. When the search results loaded, the color drained from her face like water from a broken dam. Forbes, billionaire, under 40, she whispered, her voice barely audible. Anderson Global Logistics. Founded 2019. Revenue exceeding ... She couldn't finish the sentence. William, the great divorce attorney who never lost his composure in court, stared at his phone screen in the particular silence that comes with having your entire worldview collapse in real time. Logistics empire. Supply chain revolution. Net worth estimated at $2 billion. Judge Thomas finished, reading from his own screen. $2.3 billion. The whispers erupted into a low roar of disbelief and recognition. That's impossible, Derek said, his voice rising with panic. He stocks shelves. He works at a grocery store. He's never even been on an airplane. I stood slowly, straightening the burgundy tie Clara had given me, the costume piece that had completed my 5-year performance as their family disappointment. Actually, Derek, I said, my voice carrying easily across the silent ballroom. I've been on quite a few airplanes. My company operates in 17 countries. We manage supply chains for half the Fortune 500. And you're right about one thing. I do make sure things end up exactly where they should be. Margaret, Derek's sister, was scrolling frantically through articles on her phone. Youngest person ever to revolutionized global shipping. Harvard Business School case study ... This has to be a mistake, Derek insisted, his voice growing desperate. Some kind of identity confusion. You're Logan Hartley, not whoever this is. Logan Anderson, I corrected gently. I kept my original name when I started the company. Anderson seemed more professional than Hartley for international business. Clara was staring at me from the head table, her face cycling through emotions faster than I could track them. Confusion gave way to recognition, recognition to understanding, understanding to a mixture of pride and fury that I'd never seen before. The phone calls, she whispered, loud enough for nearby tables to hear. All those calls you said were from work, the times you disappeared for days, the way you always seemed to know things about international news before it broke. Supply chain management requires staying ahead of global events, I confirmed. Wars, natural disasters, political changes, they all affect shipping routes and commodity prices. Preston, the hedge fund manager who'd been so amused by my grocery store intelligence, was reading from his phone with the horrified fascination of a man watching his own execution. Anderson Global just acquired shipping rights through the Suez Canal worth... Jesus Christ, the commission alone is more than my entire portfolio. Around the room, the whispers were building to a crescendo. He's been sitting right there. All these years? We had no idea. The grocery store was a lie? I looked around at their faces. These successful, accomplished people who had spent 5 years treating me like their charitable case, their reminder of what happened to people without drive or ambition. The grocery store wasn't a lie, I said clearly. I do work there, 2 hours every Saturday morning, stocking the international foods aisle. It's how I stay connected to retail logistics at the ground level. You'd be surprised how much you can learn about supply chain efficiency by watching how products move through a single store. Brett was hyperventilating into his napkin. 2 hours. Saturday morning. As a case study, ... Think of it as field research, I continued. Though I'll admit, after tonight I might need to find a new research location. This secret's gotten a bit too public for that kind of hands-on work. Miguel stepped forward slightly. Sir, Geneva is expecting your arrival by midnight for the morning board meeting. Should I inform them of any delays? I looked around the room one final time, At Derek's shattered expression, at Patricia's surgical hands shaking as she held her phone, at William trying to process having misjudged someone so completely, at Thomas realizing he'd been condescending to someone whose business decisions affected more lives than his judicial rulings ever would. Most of all, I looked at Clara, my sister, who was staring at me with an expression of dawning understanding and what might have been admiration. "No delays, Miguel," I said. "I think my work here is finished." I walked toward the ballroom's main entrance, Miguel falling into step beside me. The absolute silence of 200 people trying to process the impossible followed us like a shadow. "Logan, wait!" Clara's voice cut through the stillness. I turned to see her standing at the head table, her wedding dress pristine, her bouquet forgotten on the floor. "Please," she said, "don't leave like this." Behind her, Derek remained frozen, his mouth opening and closing soundlessly. The groomsmen looked shell-shocked. "Because this," I gestured around the room, "is exactly what I knew would happen. Look at them, Clara." She followed my gaze across the ballroom. Table after table of successful people sat stunned, their phones glowing with articles about Anderson Global, their faces cycling through disbelief and dawning recognition. "They're not seeing Logan the person," I continued. "They're recalculating, wondering what they can get from me now." Margaret was frantically scrolling through her contacts. Preston was taking notes on his phone. Brett stared at me like I was an alien species. "For 5 years I've been your family's cautionary tale," I said to Clara, "the one who didn't make it. The one who made you all feel better about your own accomplishments by comparison." Patricia approached us, phone clutched like evidence. "Logan, dear, if we had known about your success..." "You would have what?" I asked. "Treated me with respect? Shown genuine interest in my life instead of assuming I had nothing to contribute?" Derek finally found his voice. "But why? Why let us think? Why not just tell us?" "Because the truth is what's happening right now, Derek. The moment you found out I had money, I stopped being Clara's brother and became an opportunity." I pulled out my phone, showing 17 missed calls. 12 text messages from people who haven't spoken to me in years. 3 LinkedIn requests from wedding guests who couldn't make eye contact with me an hour ago. Miguel cleared his throat softly. "Sir, Geneva is expecting your arrival." I turned back to Clara. "You asked why I never told you. I was protecting you. I knew if the family found out, every interaction would become transactional. I wanted to keep one relationship that was real." Clara's eyes filled with tears. "It was real, Logan. It is real." "I know," I said softly. "Anderson Global is funding a new children's hospital. $200 million. The paperwork will be on your desk Monday morning if you want to run it. No special treatment. You'd have to earn it." I straightened my tie one final time. "The grocery store was the only job I told you about. It wasn't the only job I had." Judge Thomas stepped forward. "Logan, I've always respected honest work." "No," I interrupted. "You respected the idea of honest work when you thought it was all I was capable of. There's a difference between respecting work and respecting workers." The silence was heavy now, people confronting uncomfortable truths about themselves. "Clara," I said, "you have my number. The real one. Use it." Then I walked toward the exit, Miguel beside me, through the parted crowd of wedding guests. Nobody called out or tried to stop us. They were too busy reading about the man they'd known for 5 years, but had never bothered to actually meet. The glass elevator rose toward the rooftop, the city spreading below us like a circuit board of lights. Miguel spoke quietly into his earpiece while I watched the world I'd helped connect through global logistics networks. The doors opened onto the rooftop where the helicopter waited, rotors spinning, sleek and black against the night sky. "Good evening, Mr. Anderson," the pilot called over the rotor noise. "We're cleared direct to the airport. Your jet is ready for Geneva." I paused at the aircraft door and looked back. 40 floors below, 200 people were probably still processing what they'd witnessed. "Any regrets, sir?" Miguel asked. I considered 5 years of playing their disappointment, their cautionary tale about wasted potential. "None," I said finally. The helicopter lifted off smoothly, the hotel shrinking beneath us. Through the window, I could see the ballroom's lights, tiny figures probably still clustered around tables, phones glowing as they discovered article after article about the man they'd dismissed. My phone buzzed constantly with calls and messages, but I ignored them all. Tomorrow there would be time for damage control, for managing the inevitable media interest. But tonight, For the first time in 5 years, I was flying as simply myself. Not Logan, the disappointment, not the family embarrassment. Just Logan Anderson, CEO of Anderson Global Logistics, heading to a board meeting where my decisions would affect shipping routes and hundreds of thousands of workers across 6 continents. As the city lights fell away beneath us, I smiled freely. The mask was finally off. Below us, in that ballroom, 200 people were learning that sometimes the family disgrace isn't the one who failed to live up to expectations. Sometimes it's the family that failed to see who was sitting right in front of them all along. Ong, 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 ong.